Hello dear students, welcome to the another video tutorial of parasitology. In a previous lecture, we have seen the types of the parasites, the endoparasite as well as the ectoparasite, and type of the ectoparasitism. That ectoparasitism is divided into the several types. So in today's lecture, we are going to see the chapter third, the types of the hosts. As we have seen, the types of the parasites that are differentiated into the several types by means of the time spent on the host. Likewise, the parasite is also going to spend some time into the host, and they are carrying out their developmental stages in various platforms, so that the hosts are also get divided into the various types. And we are focusing on the this particular topic, the types of the host. Okay, so let's focus on the types of the host which are there. So as we all know, in biology, the host is an organism that harbors the parasite, okay, and a mutual or a commensal symbiotic, typically providing the nourishment to and shelter to the parasite. So the host is a living organism which carrying out the parasite uh, on his body or inside the host body. Okay, so the host can be characterized as a definitive or intermediate host, or a transportive type means of host, or the reservoir type of the host. So these are the categories which we are going to see. So let's highlight the some characteristic features of the host. So we all know that the definition of host is an organism which harbors the parasite in or on its own body is called as a host. So host provides shelters to the parasitic organism. Host provides nourishment to the parasitic organism. Host provides space to complete its life cycle to the parasitic organism, and host provides one means of transport. Uh, for example, for the parasites that are the, you can see one very basic example, like the amoeba is carried by the housefly to kitchen. We know that the housefly is habitual to sit on the dirty places, okay, and these amoeba from the dirty places is get attached to its legs or on its body of the housefly, and that will be carried out through the by mechanical transport, and they are airlifted from that particular area. And this housefly is habitual to rub its own body, that the cleaning of its own body by means of her two legs, frontal legs, and that will be get deposited on our kitchen utensils, as well as the housefly as seat on the food material. Okay, so at roadside there are so many stalls which are not using the proper coating on that food material, okay, the street foods, and that food may be contaminated. Okay, if you see there the house flies are getting touch with that food material. So housefly are carrying the amoeba, which may cause the amoebic dysentery to us. Okay, and the in host, uh, the host parasitic relationship. The host is always larger than the parasite. We know that we have seen these are the some characteristics of the host that are we should know. Okay, So the first type of the host is the definitive host. As we all know, the host in which the parasite become adult, so that and, and that parasite reaches to maturity and passes its sexual reproduction is called as the definitive host. That means which host is going to provide space for the sexual reproduction for that parasite is known as the definitive host. Okay, so while moving towards the definitive host, it the parasite is harbors by means of uh, the intermediate hosts. Okay, by means of intermediate host, they get touch with this definitive host. Okay, so the definitive hosts are the host in which a parasite develops to an adult or a sexual maturity stage, and it also called as the final host or the primary host. Okay, so the inter the definitive host is a definitive host, like the for example, sheep is the definitive host of the liver fluke, that is Fascicola hepatica, which harbors the adult or sexual maturity stages of the parasite, uh, known as the liver fluke. Okay, and um, one more example like the Plasmodium vivax, which the mechanical vector or the intermediate vector of the Plasmodium vivax is mosquito. But the if mosquito bites the man, that means the man is the definitive host of the Plasmodium. Okay, the definitive host is one in which a parasite reaches a sexual maturity and undergoes the reproduction. It mostly a vertebrate. Okay, so the definitive host is probably or mostly is a vertebrate. Okay, vertebrate means those animals which have the vertebral column. Okay, and a host in which the parasite reaches the sexual maturity in the vertebrates, then they multiplies and they undergoes the sexual reproduction method. Okay, and you can take one more example, like you can see in this picture that the definitive host, where the mode of transmissions are explained about the uh, trematode eggs or the trematode. Okay, so these after the trematode eggs is ingested by a snail or the gastropod, where they developed into infective cercari. Okay, so these infective cercari or the larvae, cercarian larva, are the larva of the trematode, uh, uh, known as the Cercaria, and these consumed by the snail, and the infective stages which have the flagella, and these infective carriers swim and infect the fish host. Okay, so here the intermediate host is a fish. Okay, and there is accumulation of these circarian larvae which are motile, and that get consumed by they are get accumulated into the fish. Okay, but fish is not going to show any illing sort of characters. So fish is not going to ill, and they are not going to show some character of the parasitism, or they are the host of the parasitism. But these fish are getting collected and collected these infective stage of the cercarian larva, and these larvae get accumulated into the intestine of this fish. But when these some of the birds like our mm, fish eating birds going to eat that fish, but bird will be the final host for this circadian larva to and after the infected fish, the trematode develops into the adult stages into that bird, and after the fecal material, that is the trematode eggs, release in the bird droppings, and again that bird dropling is really released into the water body, and that will be again get touch with the snails, and this life cycle goes continuous. So you are going to see, you have seen here the fish as an intermediate host, but the definitive host of the circadian larva is the uh, bird. Okay, so this is the most effective comparison between the intermediate and the final host, that is the definitive host. Okay, so we are going to see a couple of example in coming next slide to better understand, to get better understand these concepts. Okay, so let's to move towards the intermediate host. So the intermediate host, in which some developmental stages of a parasite occurs, okay, but it does not reach the sexual maturity, and it refers as the intermediate host. Okay, so intermediate host is usually the vertebrates. Okay, so then the intermediate host, which some developmental stages of the parasite occurs, and they are not in the maturity, that they are not going to reproduce. Okay, they are yeah, the divide the these two, it also known as the secondary host, and it harbors the sexual form of the parasite. Okay, so it harbors the asexual forms, that means the immature forms of the parasite. Okay, so intermediate hosts divided into two groups, that are the passive intermediate host, that are located in general in the mollusks, in the case of the cystosoma. Okay, we are going to see the detailed life cycle of the cystosoma and mode of transmission, as well as the its pathogenic effect to us in coming chapters. And the second one type is the active intermediate host. Okay, so the fly is the in case of the trypanosomes. So fly will be the intermediate host, and the mollusk will be the intermediate host uh, by means of cystosoma as well as trypanosomes. Okay, so it harbors the developing larvae, and their developing larvae are the immature one and the juvenile young stages of the parasites. Okay, so it should be noted that the parasitic diseases which requires intimate host for the transmission are restricted to the distribution of those hosts, and the distribution of the intermediate host is determined by the many factors such as the climate, vegetation, historical factors, and the harbors the level uh, of the stages, the parasite or the asexual life cycle of the parasite, and of dependent on the development takes place on these particular by means of characters, and in some cases the larval development is completed in two different intermediate hosts. Okay, referred to as a first and the second intermediate host. So the intermediate host is the host that harbors the parasite only for the short transition period, during which usually some developmental stages is completed. For example, in we can take example of the trypanosomes, the cause of the sleeping sickness disease. Okay, trypanosome cause sleeping sickness disease in humans are the intermediate host. Okay, and while the fly is the definitive host, given that the has been shown that reproduction occurs in the insects. So the second example, like the cystodes of tapeworms and other parasitic flatworms, have complex life cycles, so in which the specific developmental stages are completed in the sequence of the several different hosts. So the definite the intermediate host may be the one or two, as depending on the conditions, but the final host, that is the our final host will be the one. Okay, and the final host is the only host where the sexual uh, life cycle of that parasite is get completed. Okay, as the life cycles of many parasites are not well understood, and sometimes they are more important organism is ability as defined as a definitive, and its design uh, may continue even after it's determined to be incorrect. Okay, so for example, sludges, worms, sludge worms are the sometimes sludge worms are the sometimes considered as the intermediate host for the whirling disease. This is the one particular type of the disease, and even though it's the known that are the parasite cause the disease reproduces sexually inside this intermediate host. Okay, so these are the some type of the intermediate host, and by means of these uh, example of these cyst sporocyst in the pig or the by or the kettles. Okay, so what happens, these divided into the human as a definitive host and the intermediate host as the cattle or the pig. Okay, what happens when the in the stool the sporocysts are passed by means of the human as a definitive host. After that, these sporocysts may accidentally consume by means of the food that it may get touch with these grasses, and these sporocysts are get consumed by the pig or the cattles, and their mature sarcocyst in the muscle of this cattle or pig get infested, and after these infestations the human may eat the raw cooked meat of this pig, and this may occur as the infestation again to the human, and the developmental stages like the mm, production of the gametes of the sporocyst, and then these sporocysts get converted into the oocyst, and these oocysts get converted into sporulated oocyst and then sporocyst. Again these uh, get out by means of the these fecal material, and again this life cycle continues. Okay, so the third type of the host are the paratenic or the carrier host. The host that serves as a temporary refuge and vehicle for the reaching an obligatory host. Usually the definitive host is an the paratenic host. Okay, so the paratenic host means the one particular type of organism which provides space to transport one pathogen from the one host to the other host, or the from its developmental larval stages to the host that these parasites get complete its life cycle. Okay, so the paratenic host is not necessary for completion of the parasitic life cycle of the parasites. Okay, so there is no need of this paratenic host to complete its life cycle. They need the definitive host for the completion of this parasitic life cycle or the sexual life cycle. The paratenic host remains infective to the other host, always remain infective. Okay, one host is there, suppose the paratenic host, and it get infested by means of these parasites, but these of these suppose this one housefly is there, and housefly is going to eaten by this some bigger host. Okay, so the bigger the housefly, the get eaten by this bigger animal, that will be that housefly will be the infective, by means of that is already infected by the parasite, and it get eaten by that large animal, and that animal will have chances to get infested by the parasite. Okay, hence it consume the housefly. So immature stages of the parasites does not go in the developmental stages, but they wait for the paratenic host to get consumed by the final host. Okay, so for example, the Toxocera larval stages, this is the second instar larvae, which is get invested by these Toxocera, and these parasites in these Toxocera, which are in these larvae, they wait for the get uh, eat by some birds, for example chickens. Okay, and once they get consumed by the chickens or the birds, then they are get attached with the intestine, and they complete their life cycle or the sexual life cycle inside that host. So here the paratenic host is the second instar larva, which is infested by these Toxocera, and the final host is the chicken. Okay, so here one another example of these paratenic host, the larval nematodes are consumed by the smaller fish, that is this fish A in this diagram, and the larger fish, that is the fish B, which consume these small fishes. Okay, but the small fish is already infested by the nematode larvae, which is in his stomach, that this large fish is going to eat the small fish, and this large fish is directly get infested by these nematode larvae by eating these small fish. So these small fish will be the paratenic host, and these large fish will be the final host. And if we if our dogs or our cats are not going to remove their intestines while eating these big fish, okay, in accidental host type, so our dog or cat may infested by these nematode larvae in the adult form, that will be the accidental host in case they are going to eat this fish. Okay, so this is the one particular example of the paratenic host. So the fourth main type is the reservoir host, and reservoir host are the host that makes the parasite available to transmission to the another host. Here the mode of transmission of a parasitism is from the one host to the other host, while in other previous three examples the mode of transmissions are the by means of the parasites. Okay, here already infested host is going to transmit the other host by means of um, it usually not attached by the infection. Okay, so the reservoir host is not showing any the characteristics of the illness. Okay, so that these characteristics, so we can't or the host is going to eat that can't understand that this reservoir host is the infested by means of some parasitism. Okay, so the simple word reservoir, reservoirs means the accumulated sort of things. Okay, suppose for example we says that this is the reservoir of the drinking water. That means drinking water is stored in a particular area or the particular pot, that is named as the reservoir of the drinking water. So here the reservoir host is the reservoir of the parasites. Okay, so don't get confused by these words, and you should be very careful about understanding these concepts. Okay, so the reservoir host is, it is usually not affected by the infection, but the infective stages of the parasites are resides in this reservoir host. It serves as a reservoir of infections for man or the domesticated animals. Okay, so that these the reservoir host maintaining an infectious agents. Okay, so this is the some sort of thing that the reservoir host is maintaining the lines or the maintaining the infectious stages of the parasites. Okay, so it will kept the alive or in active form the infective stages, that they as soon as they get contact with these domestic animals or the man, they can infect as soon as possible to these animals and all the host, another host that will be the definitive host for these parasites which is get collected by means of this reservoir host. Okay, so the reservoir host is and those parasites live as a temporary refugee till the they found the final host. Um, so they do not show any ill effect because they are tolerant to the parasites. Okay, so these reservoir host is tolerant to the parasites, that's why his immune system or they are habitual with these parasitic infestations, and they are not showing any illness or the any character like they are get infested by these parasitic mode of life, and they are living with these parasitic mode of life. So the one particular example like the Trypanosoma brucei is the blood parasite found naturally in the wild animals, but in it infects the man and the domestic animals and cause the Nagana disease in the tropical Africa. So this is common in the very tropical Africa, that is the Trypanosoma brucei by means of the mode of transmission in the wild animals to the man or these domestic animals get caused by this Nagana disease in the tropical Africa. So this is the one particular example how that these reservoir host carrying the host to the at the differential stages. Okay, as you can see, this is the uh, tick-borne encephalitis virus, example of the tick-borne encephalitis virus, and the reservoir host is mice over here. So if one particular tick is going to feed with these other type of the tick, and the co-feeding occurs on the mice. Okay, hence the mice is adaptive to these uh, parasites which are residing inside its body. So the accumulation of these parasitism or parasites into these mice, and these encephalitis viruses get accumulated into the mice, so that the when any tertiary consumer is going to eat these mice, so that will be directly affected with these encephalitis viruses. So these tick-borne encephalitis viruses are the one of the example that the reservoir host of known as the mice. Okay, so here are some differential characters of the definitive host uh, versus the intermediate host, so that you will get more idea by studying this comparatively, and you will not be get confused by what are the words which look similar but actually are not similar, uh, is the definitive or the intermediate. So the definition of the definitive host are the organism that suppose the sexual reproductive forms of the parasites. Okay, they support the sexual reproduction of the parasite, the definitive host, which is the last host, and the intermediate host are organisms that support the immature or non-reproductive forms of the parasites. So, in second point, the definitive host, also called primary host, and or the intermediate host are also called as the secondary host. The definitive host are sexual reproduction. They suppose the sexual reproduction of the parasite occurs in them, and asexual reproduction of the parasites occur in the intermediate host. And intermediate host form the formation of the zygote occurs in intermediate host, as well as the sexual differentiation of the parasite occurs in the intermediate host. So the examples of the both in definitive host is the plasmodium is a female anopheles mosquito, is uh, going to harbor the parasites, and the intermediate host of the plasmodium vivax is human. Okay, so these are the some differential measures of the definitive host as well as the intermediate host. So as you can see in this picture, that the intermediate host are the developmental stages occurs into the intermediate host as well as the definitive host, so that the intermediate host get connected by means of the definitive host, hence though the life cycle of that particular parasite is going to complete. Okay, so again it get divided into the two parts, that are the intermediate host and the definitive host. So the tropozoites is the stage of in the intermediate host, it get converted into the gamocytes, and these gametocytes are get um, touch with these definitive host and get developed into these definitive host, that the gametocytes are get converted into the gametes, and the formation of the zygote and the various developmental stages are occur um, in between zygote and the tripozoites, and these trophozoites are again um, get transported by means of the fecal material, and again they are going to uh, in form of the tropozoites, and again gametocytes, and again zygote formation, and again tropozoites. So this life cycle will be continuous uh, by means of these intermediate host as well as the definitive host. So we are going to stop here, and we have completed our third chapter, that are the types of the host. And in next chapter we are going to see the host parasitic relationship, so that the how this host and the parasite relationship going to benefit each other, or the uh, which one is going to harm more. We are going to see that the host specificity, structural specificity, or the physiological specificity, and the ecological specificity of this host parasitic relationship. So we will meet in the next lecture. So thank you guys.